So welcome back, you all. Thank you for joining me. This is a part two. I'm reading from my book, Necessary, and I'm actually streaming live while I'm reading. You're listening to Z with Unlocking Greatness podcast, by the way. I'm streaming live, and I have some of my followers watching me right now. I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 19. One of the people on the live said, Z, I would love to hear you read from You Are a Lion. So if you have your book, Necessary, turn to chapter 19, and I'm going to start off with reading a little bit from the affirmation. Each chapter starts with an affirmation, and then I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit from the chapter. This is a pretty powerful chapter because it's a journey that my daughter went through when she didn't know who she was and she needed to be reminded. So, chapter 19, the affirmation is You Are a Lion. Who is this that I see? I don't recognize you anymore. You walk with a different stride, as though you are a lion. You walk as if you know you are fiercely and wonderfully made, as if you know you could do anything. Now I see where your confidence arises. Now I see why you achieve what seems impossible to others. I see the King of Kings in your shadow. I see the lion standing next to you. I see the lion in you. That's the affirmation. I'll read a little bit from this chapter. I'll give you guys a little bit of a backdrop. My daughter would, actually, I'll just go ahead and read a little bit. I would never forget many years ago when my daughter, who is now an adult, was in middle school, and I found her crying in her room because some girls at her school did not want to talk to her anymore. She sobbed about not having done anything wrong, and she didn't understand why all of a sudden they turned against her. She was so heartbroken she could barely speak, and as she cried while saying, and I quote, I don't understand why they won't talk to me. I didn't do anything to them. She went on and on about how they gave her the silent treatment. She was truly crushed. You could see even from her body language that she was very dependent on those relationships, and she placed her happiness in their hands. I had never seen her become so distraught and cry so hard. I'm sure most mothers would have sympathized, held their daughters, and told them everything was going to be okay. But in that moment, something inside of me sparked. It was a righteous anger because it took everything in me to sit still as I watched this beautiful, kind-hearted, loving young girl allow her self-confidence to be shattered by the thoughts and opinions of others. So without any pre-planned speech, I began to give her wisdom that poured out from the depth of my soul. To this day, that was a moment she told me she would never forget because it completely changed her life. I closed the door and got about 2 inches away from her face. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, You are a lion. You are a lion because my blood flows through your veins. And the blood, the Spirit of Jesus Christ, flows through me. I am a lion, and the power that is within me has been passed on to you. That power is the strength of God. Don't ever beg someone to love you or accept you. Lions sometimes have to walk alone. Lions lead the way. Lions are courageous. Lions are powerful. And you are powerful because of the God that we serve. You are boldly and fiercely made. Things that would devour most people don't devour us because he that is within us is greater than he that is in the world. When people know that their rejection can crush you, they will continue to use that power over you. Don't you ever give your power away. So I want you to go to school and walk with your head held high because you know who you are. Don't run after people. Run after knowing who you are. A beautiful, powerful lion in God. Don't ever be afraid to walk alone, sit alone, or make new friends. Others will become attracted to the light they see in you. I am a lion, and you are my child. My blood flows through you. Don't you ever forget who you are. You are a lion. As I spoke those words to my tender young daughter, her eyes widened. Her facial expression completely changed, and she was empowered because for the first time in her life, she knew who she was. She walked in her school the next day with her head held high. She later told me that she sat by herself in the cafeteria the next day with no fears of being alone and with a newfound confidence that she never had. She made new friends and never again allowed anyone to define her self-worth or demean her value. Now, some of you may be thinking, that was a bit too much to tell a young girl who was simply crying about lost friendships, because that's a normal part of life, and it happens all the time in school. But I would like to tell you this. From that day forth, my daughter never had that issue again, because she knew who she was, a lion. For the first time in her life, she understood the power in knowing what she was made of and where she came from. And while this story is probably a typical scenario that occurs in our children's lives, I think it is critical that they start to learn as young as possible that they are enough. And no one gets to determine their value and rule over them in such a way that they beg for acceptance from others. For me, the issue was larger than simply a lost friendship. It was an identity issue. She needed to know who she was and the power that lived inside of her. That was very important for her to learn so that she would not take those same insecurities into her adult life by letting others determine her value. My daughter is an adult now, and to this day, she still remembers that precious moment when she realized the power that was already living inside of her. It was always there. She just didn't know it. Sometimes we have to be reminded of who we really are in the presence of God when we face our difficult times in life. In fact, over the years, there have been a few precious moments when she would call me or text me saying, and I quote, "Mom, I need to hear that lion story again." So I would call or text her back, and I quote, "My daughter, you are a lion. You are a lion because," and I would go on and on and on. She would reply back, "Thanks, Mom." I decided to share this private story with the world because it made such a huge impact in my daughter's life. And to my surprise, it tremendously impacted the lives of people in several nations after I shared this story on one of my podcast episodes titled "You Are a Lion." Let me take a break from that for a moment. If you all did not watch that full podcast episode called "You Are a Lion," it is available on my YouTube channel. And for those of you who are watching or listening to this YouTube video, I'm streaming live as I'm reading to you all with some of the members from my social media platform. So that's why you see me looking down at times. I'm going to read a little bit more. For those who are just joining, my name is Zenja Glass. I'm reading from my book, Necessary, and I'm reading a little bit from the chapter called "You Are a Lion." I did not expect so many people would find their story in the story of a child who was distraught over some friends talking about her and refusing to sit with her. But isn't it funny how God works in our lives? Sometimes we can find our answers in life by simply learning from children. A common response I received from many of my podcast and social media subscribers was, and I quote, "I wish I had someone in my life who told me those words when I was younger." End quote. It broke my heart to hear these words because even though I had a very challenging childhood, growing up in poverty, my mother always told me I was a lion. I remember when her health was rapidly declining and she could no longer speak, but she mouthed the words to me. "You are a lion. You are strong, baby. You are very strong." I broke down in tears because I didn't want her to leave me. Nor did I believe I was strong enough to deal with all the pressures I was feeling at that time. I was shaking so hard I placed my forehead on her forehead and I said, "Mama, Please don't leave me. I'm not that strong. I'm not that strong, Mama. I thought she would cry with me, but she didn't. She moved me about 2 or so inches away from her face, looked me in the eyes with a determined, resolute, strong expression without any fears or doubts about the words she was about to say. And she mouthed these words to me. You are a lion. You are strong, baby. You're strong. And you are going to make it. She died just a few hours later. You guys, give me a break. My God, my God. Wasn't planning on reading these chapters. As I'm recording this YouTube episode, I'm streaming live, and one of the followers on my social media requested that I read this chapter, so I was unprepared to read this and go through this. For those who are just joining, I'm reading from my book, Necessary. This is a chapter called You Are a Lion. I just read a portion here about one, helping my daughter when she was going through an identity issue of not knowing who she was. By the way, let me pause and say this, because I'm not going to rush for anybody. Whoever you are and whatever you're going through in life right now, baby, you got to know who you are. You got to know who you are in God. And don't you ever in your life beg somebody to love you. Don't you ever in your life beg somebody to accept you, or even accept the dream or the calling that you have over your life. I won't even get into that. Some of you need to be out there right now doing exactly what God told you to do, but you're not doing it because you don't know who you are, and you're waiting on approval from somebody else to tell you if it's a good idea or not. The devil is a lie. Let me get back to reading. I'm reading from my book, Necessary. This chapter is called You Are a Lion. And I just read a very touching scene of right before my mother died. She wasn't even able to speak at that time, and I was just crying because I didn't feel that I was strong enough to go on without her. And she was mouthing the words to me, and I'll never in my life forget it. And she said, you are a lion. So I'm going to pick up from where I left off. It took me some time to realize that the strength she was talking about was not only my strength in character and perseverance, but my strength in God. She would always tell me to be strong in the Lord. In that moment, when I was feeling powerless and weak, I discovered I had a new level of strength that I didn't even know I had. I had been given the strength to stand and continue on because my mama reminded me of who I was, a lion in Christ. If you've never been told these words, I want you to hear them now. I want you to hear and believe the very words my mama passed down to me. I passed down to my daughter, and now I'm passing on to you. You are a lion. You are strong. You're strong, baby. You're strong. And even when you don't believe you have the power or the strength to go on, or the power to overcome whatever challenges are coming your way, even though no one may have told you this when you were younger, know that I'm telling you now. You are a lion. You are strong, and you will make it. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Please don't ever beg anyone to love you. Please don't ever beg anyone to accept you. If someone has decided to walk out of your life, I pray that God gives you the strength to walk in love and in humility as you open the door very wide and wish them well. Ooh, I don't know if I should keep reading. If the season has come for some of you, let me read this again. If the season has come for some people to leave your life, you must know that sometimes you have to be okay with standing alone, just you and God. I am a living witness that sometimes our greatest growth comes from the lowest valleys, when we had to stand alone. Those were the times when God showed me that I was enough. And despite what others said about me, He saw the best in me. You are a lion. You have something special to offer the world. And I sincerely pray that after reading or listening to this chapter, you walk with your head held a little bit higher. And you begin to elevate your thinking and place greater value on yourself. You are a child of God, a fierce lion. And you can do anything through Christ who strengthens you. This is not arrogance talking. It's a knowing of who you are and whose you are, an heir of the King. And that's Romans 8:17. For those of you who are joining this live, please put that passage in, Romans 8:17. Someone's asking, where can I find this book? This is my book, Necessary. It's found on my site at unlockinggreatness.com. I also have an entire retreat based on my book, Necessary. I so welcome you to go on the transformational journey with me. My book is called Necessary. So I'm not going to finish reading through some more. There's a reflection in here. There's recommended readings at the end of each chapter. There's assignments. So each chapter you go through, you're going on a transformational journey. But let me pause with this. I'm going to be getting back to you all in just a second, those who are streaming live. But I want to turn to a passage really quickly in Matthew 13. I told you guys in the last podcast episode that I was recording that I would refer to this passage about the parable of the sower. So let me jump really quickly. Just imagine me jumping across a river, and let me go to Matthew 13. Matthew 13 is in verse. I'll just read it, starting in verse 1. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But, and this is extremely important that you pay attention to verse 6, but when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered, because they had no root. My God. My God. Verse 7. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. My God. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160, 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. Let me explain what that parable means really quickly, and I'm going to close out this YouTube episode. And actually, the better way to explain it is I'll use Jesus' words. So Matthew 13 and verse 18, Jesus is explaining to them what this parable meant. In verse 18, listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. My God. This is the seed sown along the path. My God. Verse 20, the one who received the seed that fell on rocky places is the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy, which many of you all may be doing right now, right? But hold on, check out what can happen. Verse 21, but since he has no root, my God, but since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. Verse 22, the one who received the seed that fell along the thorns is the man who hears the word, but listen to this, you guys, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. Verse 23, which is where we all are striving to get to. But the one who received the seed that fell on good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it He produces a crop yielding 160, 30 times what was sown. I'm going to end this YouTube episode by saying, one, I pray that you all have been encouraged by me reading the story in my book Necessary. I'll hold it up a second here. The chapter, I read 2 chapters to you all. In the first part, I read If I Were Your Enemy. And then the second part I just read a little bit from is the chapter called You Are a Lion. I pray to God that something's been sparked inside of you all, that you realize who you are in God. And no matter what your circumstances or your situations is, you've got to make sure you know who the heck you are and whose you are. And then you've got to make sure that you guard as you're getting knowledge, as you're getting the word of God, these seeds sown inside of you. You have to make a decision. Which soil are you going to become? Are you going to be the seed that's sown along the path? Where immediately, because there's no root at all, it's just taken away. Are you going to be the one sown among the rocky places, right? Are you going to be the one sown among the thorns where the words of life begin to choke it out? Or are you going to be the one sown on good soil where you're going to allow it to produce crop and to multiply? Does that make sense? This is why we have to know who the enemy is, which is why I read the chapter earlier about If I Were Your Enemy, because the enemy's role is to keep your little butt as one of those seeds sown among just the path. He don't mind you even hearing this message right now. The enemy don't care 2 cents about you hearing the scripture and getting motivated a little bit for the next 10, 20, 30 minutes. He don't care about that. He don't even care if you accept the word with great joy and start doing a couple of good things. His main focus is to choke your little butt out, to get you from accepting and keeping that word, remembering that word, right? Having it sown in your heart, walking in it every day, remembering who you are. That's why I ended with the chapter, You Are a Lion. Because my daughter had an identity issue. She didn't know who she was. I had an identity issue. I didn't know who I was. My mama had to remind me just a few hours before she died, you are a lion. And I thought she was referring to the strength that I had. I didn't know that it went beyond that. She was referring to you are a lion because your strength is in God. And anything you go through in life, you're gonna get through it. So I love you all. I pray you've been encouraged. Again, my name is Zenja Glass. I was reading from my book Necessary. If you don't have a copy, I encourage you to go to unlockinggreatness.com. Get yourself a copy of Necessary. I can honest to God say that I didn't write this book. Honest to God. God wrote this book through me. He woke me up in the middle of the night years ago, and this was before my son died, years ago, and told me in the middle of the night, it was about 3 a.m, I'm having you write a book, and it's going to be called Necessary. And I saw this cover, I kid you not, just like this with the small word necessary. My name was nowhere on the cover. And many people ask me, why is your name not on the cover? Because I got to go with the vision God gave me. There's nothing even on the back of the book. God gave me that vision. What I didn't know is he was going to have me live through it the next couple of years as I was writing it. And I definitely didn't know at the end of writing my book that my son would pass away. He took me through this transformational journey, and I know that it is because he's going to transform and change lives all over the world. So I encourage you all, please help spread the word about Necessary. Get it as gifts for friends, graduates, people going through things, people experiencing things in life. It really takes you on a beautiful transformational journey, and I ask you guys to please help spread this all over the nations. God has made it very clear to me, if you show up and you begin reading this, I'm going to take this book to the ends of the world because you're lifting me up. So I ask for your help in that. I love you all. You're listening to Z with Unlocking Greatness podcast, and I pray this has encouraged you. Bye-bye.